Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Monday, August 21st, 2017. The main fire potential impacts for the next few days include a mix of wet and dry thunderstorms, mainly over the southern half of the Great Basin today, pushing a little bit further north into northern Nevada and northern Utah on Tuesday, and then continuing a pretty significant push further northward on Wednesday into Idaho and western Wyoming. The main concern for some drier type thunderstorms are found over the central Idaho mountains, with a mix of wet and dry across central Idaho and western Wyoming, and generally wet thunderstorms further south. Gusty outflow winds are expected with all of these storms, and new initial attack is definitely possible in areas that will see wet thunderstorms as well, as we saw yesterday. The last 24 hours worth of precipitation and lightning are shown here with a pretty good storm complex over southwest Utah. Those storms were on the wet side, southwest Utah and the Arizona Strip, with over an inch observed at a couple of those sites. With that increase in lightning, we did see an increase in initial attack yesterday, especially over southern Utah. Most of those fires did remain on the small side, but one fire in northern Utah, the Puddle Fire, did increase to over 1,000 acres yesterday. This map also shows the path of the solar eclipse today, with the eclipse passing over the Great Basin around 11:30. The observed precipitation from the past 7 and 30 days are shown here. The past 7 days does not include the precipitation from yesterday, however, and it has been generally dry before yesterday when we saw that surge across southern Utah. Past 30 days have shown that good monsoon moisture we had in place during July, but western Idaho continues to be the area with the most dryness. Current ERCs show this trend as well, with ERCs in the central Idaho mountains above the 80th and 90th percentiles. ERCs have been on the uptick across much of the northern two-thirds of the area with these warm and dry conditions. Many values are back up to near normal for the time of year, and so we'd expect to see the chance for some new fires to pop up as this lightning moves through, especially across the northern half of the area where those fuels are a bit drier. 10-hour fuel moistures continue to show some fairly low values across the Great Basin. This morning's satellite imagery shows a strong area of high pressure off the Pacific coast and an area of low pressure off the southern California coast. That's what's allowing moisture to move into the southern Great Basin, and as this low moves northward over the next few days, it will draw moisture further north into the northern half of the Great Basin. But for this morning, across the northern half of the area, cloud cover will be fairly limited for eclipse viewing, but further south over the southern third of the Great Basin, cloud cover should obscure some of the viewing there today. Here's the forecast images for this afternoon. As we can see, that deeper moisture in place over the southern third of the Great Basin, with drier conditions across the northern two-thirds. No high-risk triggers have been issued for today, but we do see some brown PSAs still in place over the central Idaho mountains and southeast Idaho. Coverage of those thunderstorms is shown here, with the best chance for the wet thunderstorms occurring over southern Utah and the Arizona Strip. Gusty outflow winds are expected with any of these thunderstorms down south, as shown on the wind forecast. Further north, winds should be light today. On Tuesday, that band of moisture moves a little bit further northward, and we'll expect to see an increase in thunderstorm coverage across northern Nevada and northern Utah, possibly moving into very far southern Idaho for Tuesday afternoon as that area of low pressure moves a little bit further north along the California coast. Some of these storms, especially across the northern periphery, may be that mix of wet and dry, and while fuels aren't overly critical in these areas, they certainly have had some drying for the past few days, and with the grass crop there, we do expect to see an increase in initial attack, especially in any areas that see strikes outside the main core where they're still experiencing gusty outflow winds from those storms. By Wednesday, an area of low pressure drops into southern Canada. This will draw the moisture from southern Great Basin up into the northern Great Basin, and we'll see an increase in thunderstorm activity across Idaho and western Wyoming. Given the fact these fields have been dry for the past few weeks, and this shot of moisture is fairly quick, with a mix of wet and dry, we've highlighted the central Idaho mountains and eastern Idaho for an increased risk of new large fire activity. We'll still see some isolated thunderstorms further south across the Great Basin, but on Wednesday, the main area of concern and the main area for those thunderstorms to develop will be across the northern half of the area. This will be the most critical day of the period, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the thunderstorm forecast for Wednesday. Winds are expected to be light outside of the thunderstorm activity. 3-day precipitation accumulations shown here show the best chance for precip over the Utah mountains as well as the Sierra Front, and a little bit of a chance moving into Idaho for that Wednesday time period. By Thursday, we already see that moisture quickly moving off to the north and east, and we'll see some drying come in behind that area of low pressure, and some enhanced winds also, especially over Idaho. The combination of lightning on Wednesday and wind on Thursday could create the potential for some critical fire weather days. By Friday, more zonal westerly flow moves into the Great Basin for general drying, especially across the western half of the area. And more of the same is expected by Saturday, with clearing across much of the Great Basin. An area of high pressure begins to build in for warming temperatures region-wide. And by Sunday, continued warm and dry conditions will increase fire danger region-wide, with many PSAs moving into the brown category. 7-day precip totals are shown here, which look pretty similar to the 3-day totals, although there may be some lingering storms in that Thursday time frame across the northeast portion of the area, and hopefully some of that moisture will move into the northern Rockies. The extended forecast moving into the last week of August and the first week of September is calling for pretty warm temperatures across the Great Basin and the western U.S., and below normal chances for precip across Idaho, with a chance for above normal precipitation across the far southern tip of the Great Basin. This concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.